What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of the Wolverine Live Recruiting Show. I am your host, EJ Holland. Today, we're going to be covering a ton of topics because I'll be answering your questions tonight. So, should be a lot of fun. Obviously, like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, get notifications every time we drop new videos. And also, subscribe to the Wolverine.com if you want the latest intel on Bryce Underwood, potential flip targets, the portal's coming up soon. Head over to the Wolverine.com. We have a special promotion for our YouTube members. That's $1 for 2 months. Use the promo code UM1. And it's the best time to use this promo code because that gets you through National Signing Day and gets you to the end of the portal season as well, or towards the end of the portal season, at least the beginning of the portal season. So sign up today, use that promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months over at the Wolverine.com. No strings attached. All right. So like I said, we're going to answer your questions tonight in the order in which they came. But if you do want to skip the line and you want to contribute to my travel budget, I have a big trip coming up this week, which should be a lot of fun. Make sure to hit that super chat button. That's the little box with the $sign that allows you to skip the line. And again, that money goes directly to my travel budget so I can continue to see Michigan's commits and top targets on the road. All right, let's go ahead and start off with Tyson Smith. He says, what's your confidence level in Bryce Underwood? Great, let's get the Underwood stuff out of the way. So I've said 35% since like the very beginning of this. And I would probably stick with that or maybe even go a tiny bit lower following his official visit to LSU over the weekend. I think LSU once again impressed Underwood and his family. I know that Michigan has a big NIL offer on the table, but LSU is doing its best to counter that and making sure all their ducks are in a row when it comes to appeasing Underwood and his family with NIL. I still think that right now Underwood believes Joe Sloan will be at LSU despite some rumors tying him to the East Carolina job. So I think those around LSU are still feeling confident. With that said, the reason I'm giving Michigan some type of chance in this is because the NIL offer for Underwood is very real. Michigan's very desperate for a solution at the quarterback position. Head coach Sherrone Moore is personally leading this recruitment. Now, back, I want to say a week and a half, 2 weeks ago at this point, I wrote that On3's report for the offer being $5 million for Underwood was actually not really where it was, and that I thought it could double. And the reason I wrote that is because I knew the number was off. I just, didn't want to throw a coworker under the bus. CBS Sports reported this weekend that the number is closer to double, which would put it at 10 million. And I am here telling you that the number is actually around 10.5 million. So 10.5 million is what I've heard. Now that is over 4 years, and obviously it would take some adjusting if Bryce was a 3-and-out player, if he did land at Michigan, but not overly crazy when you think about the offer that Nico Iamaleava got at Tennessee. I'm sure I butchered the last name, but he got $8 million, and that was a couple of cycles ago. Underwood is the number one player in the country. NIL has advanced, so it's really not like super crazy. I know it seems crazy just because Michigan hasn't played NIL at all and has really pitched transformational over transactional. But I feel like these numbers are getting a little bigger as NIL becomes, more prominent and more structured. So yeah, I mean, Michigan is all in on getting Underwood. I even asked this week, I was like, hey, I asked a source that would obviously be in the know. I said, any 25 quarterbacks that I can check in on, it's getting kind of late and the source simply replied, right now it's kind of difficult with Underwood. And it is getting late. If you miss on Underwood, what do? You're definitely going to have to take 2 out of the portal in that situation. Do you try to find a late riser? Because I've thrown out a name like Malik Washington, who is on the radar. He's an on 300 quarterback committed to Maryland, but it's getting so late that you're probably not going to have a lot of time to make a move with him. So you could end up in a situation where, I compared it to maybe like, what was that? Like 5 cycles ago at this point, when they just randomly got a commitment down the stretch from Dan Villari. You could see somebody like that, although I'm not sure that would help out the quarterback room. There's a reason Villari's playing tight end now somewhere else. So, but I think portal is going to be just absolutely massive in the scenario that Underwood doesn't come to Michigan. But until he signs with LSU, it appears Michigan is not going to back down on the NIL front. So again, my confidence level remains pretty much the same as it's always remained, 35%. And like I said, with LSU getting some confidence, maybe a little bit lower. But since the number is so large, I mean, it is what it is. I don't think Bryce would be considering Michigan at all if there weren't a big NIL offer on the table, which is, kind of sad, I guess. I think Michigan has really prided itself on players that want to be at Michigan, but different times and desperate times call for desperate measures as well. Tyson Smith says, what do you think about the new NIL deal? So Michigan has partnered with Passes and has put together an NIL deal that is significant because Michigan got some money up front. I believe it was a $7 million deal up front, and some of those funds or a different section of funds will be allocated towards recruiting, specifically with Underwood. So maybe that 10.5 million gets a little signing bonus or something of that nature, goes up a little bit depending on what LSU does. So it's significant in that regard. In terms of Passes as a whole, it's kind of a newer company. I'm really not all that familiar with it. I feel like I just celebrated a birthday. I'm in my 30s. I feel like I'm kind of getting out of touch with these platforms that are really popping up. But from what I've seen, it's just basically, Michigan players will have an opportunity to give exclusive behind the scenes content. And, fans will be allowed to contribute and subscribe and all that stuff. So, again, I can't really sit here and say I'm an expert on Passes or social networks like that, but that's kind of the premise of it. But I think the most important part is that Michigan got some money up front and that this company is willing to invest on the recruiting side. So I think it's still a bit of an unknown in terms of what it means for the future. They did sign a deal with Texas that was kind of similar, except I think Michigan's was a little better because there was some upfront money involved and because there was a dedication to helping with recruiting. And I'm sure, there's going to be a lot of additions coming out of the portal this December. So I think some of that money could be used, some of the Passes money could be used for that as well, which is a positive. I know it's not like, I know a lot of people speculated like Tom Brady's company, or it was going to be some massive donor and massive donation. I know it wasn't that, but I still think anything that helps, especially when you're getting upfront money of that significant of an amount, I think is something to be positive about. Last question from Tyson Smith. He says, chicken strips or nuggets? That's a good question. I think it really depends on like where you go, I guess. Because, if you go to Chick-fil-A, the nuggets for some reason are better than their chicken strips. Like I was excited to try Chick-fil-A chicken strips a while back and was just kind of disappointed. I was like, the nuggets are better. But normally, I would like chicken strips. Obviously I grew up in the South, so I like Cane's quite a bit. Though the chicken strips are kind of overrated. Like it's just the Cane's sauce. I don't know, man. Yeah, like I said, it really depends. I mean, my go-to, the only chicken spot I really go to because I'm limited in options here in Norfolk is Chick-fil-A, in which I would choose their nuggets over their chicken strips for sure. Um, John A. Schultz says the recruiting gods are fickle, from landing Shamari Earls and Andrew Babalola to losing Ivan Taylor and likely losing Andrew Olesh, Andrew Marsh, Jacob Washington, and Jalen Williams. Any backup plans for all these losses? Well, they haven't lost them yet, John. You don't have to be so sad just because other schools are expressing interest and they may visit other schools. They haven't completely lost them yet. Now, Ivan Taylor, I think, is more than likely out of this class. There's a reason Steve Wilfong and I put in predictions for Alabama. But Andrew Olesh, Andrew Marsh, Jacob Washington, Jalen Williams, we have not put in predictions for them to end up elsewhere. So that means that it's not likely they're flipping yet. It just means there's, a chance that something could happen with their commitments. I think that, in terms of Andrew Olesh, Oregon does scare me a bit, especially the Ducks getting that last visit. But I think Michigan's track record with tight end development, I think his familiarity with the program, his relationship with Steve Casula, after all of this drama late, I still see a good path for Michigan to potentially keep Olesh committed. I think his concerns with the quarterback situation are definitely interesting. So, we'll see on Olesh, but I do think the path is there for them to keep him. Andrew Marsh, the school that concerns me the most here is Washington, who's really making a hard push and is remaining in contact on basically a daily basis. But heading all the way out to the Pacific Northwest. I mean, he's been to Michigan so many times. He has great relationships with Ron Bellamy, Sherrone Moore, kids in the class. I think if Michigan can maybe give Andrew Marsh an even better NIL package than they already have and, convince him about the future of the quarterback position, much like they have to do with Olesh. Because if you remember, Andrew Marsh was big a couple of weeks ago and trying to help Michigan in its efforts to flip Bryce Underwood. But I think both Olesh and Marsh probably have some concerns in terms of, okay, what if Underwood doesn't come? What does the future look like at the quarterback position? And it's murky waters. Of course, Sherrone Moore is going to tell him the transfer portal, which he did. Olesh told me that. He said he had that conversation with Moore. Moore said he was going to go in the portal, and that's great, but they still don't know who that guy's going to be. They're the guy that's going to be throwing them the ball. If it's not Underwood, they probably don't know who it is. The guy's not on the roster right now. So I think that's kind of the concern there. So, we'll see with Marsh as well, but right now, not, too high on the concern meter until he visits somewhere. Jacob Washington did visit Mizzou. I think Bellamy has a strong relationship there. Obviously, a New Orleans native, attended the same high school. Mizzou's been there. They've been willing to offer NIL packages to, I don't want to call Jacob Washington a lower level recruit, but not necessarily that high end recruit. For example, Sean Terry is a guy that Michigan was high on. He got a nice little NIL package committed to Mizzou. So, I mean, they could do the same thing there with Jacob Washington. And I think kind of the same thing as Olesh and Marsh, just a little concern about the future of the quarterback position. Michigan just landed Jamar Browder, who's a similar receiver. They're still working on Derek Meadows, who's a similar receiver. So maybe just exploring, a few other options, Mizzou being one, Georgia Tech being the other school that's involved here as well. And then Jalen Williams is definitely an interesting one. He's been really solid. He was a vocal leader throughout the summer, but Wisconsin hasn't given up on him. He is expected to visit Wisconsin this weekend, which is concerning. But Michigan has been in contact this week. They're expected to see him on the road during the bye week. And so if Michigan can prevent Jalen from visiting Wisconsin this weekend, then I think he just shuts it down. But if he does show up to Wisconsin this weekend, then again, that that is a reason for concern. And, with Jalen, I've gotten a lot of questions on why he would consider Wisconsin. He's liked Wisconsin from the very start. They were his other finalists, but I'm really not sure what's kind of pushing him to have this late interest, especially with Esposito building that relationship with him, the defensive line production, Sherrone Moore knowing him for years. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Wisconsin obviously isn't an Oregon or anything like that. So I don't know. That one's one that's going to be interesting to follow over the next couple of days to see if he actually does make that trip to Wisconsin on Saturday. John A. Schultz says, EJ, any of the other Michigan players not listed above likely to leave the class or looking around? Feels like it's only a matter of time until somebody as solid as Eli Owens visits elsewhere. I don't think Eli's visiting anywhere. I think the other guys are pretty solid. I haven't heard much, if you kind of run through, this is just off the top of my head, but if you run through, like the running backs are solid. The receivers, obviously, we talked about. Eli's solid. I think the offensive linemen are solid. I think the D linemen are solid with the exception of, Jalen in this Wisconsin situation. Haven't heard much buzz on Chase Taylor, who's the lone linebacker commit. And, the DBs outside of Ivan Taylor are solid. Kainoa Winston is locked in. I just saw him this weekend and had a good combo with his dad. Shamari Earls is locked in. Jaden Sanders just visited for the game against Oregon. Haven't heard anything really on him. So, I think everybody for now, unless, I report on it and something changes, is locked in. So I don't think these guys visiting other schools should create panic. It's just something to monitor, with the exception of Ivan Taylor, who, if you're really a big Ivan Taylor fan, then you should panic. Daniel Rebane says, who's more likely to flip to Oregon, Lincoln Cure or Andrew Olesh? That's a good question, man. I don't know. I know Oregon just got a commitment from Vander Plug. Obviously, they want 2 tight ends, so they would love to have Olesh or Lincoln Cure. They had Cure on campus here recently. Olesh also was on campus recently. Olesh is making that visit on November 30th, which is the last weekend before signing day. So it could be either. I don't know. I think a lot depends on the next few weeks. For now, I think, if you were to ask me, does Olesh flip to Oregon or stick with Michigan? What's your kind of chances on that? I would say, 51-49, he sticks with Michigan. But I will say that I've continued to check in with sources around the program, and they are very optimistic that Olesh sticks with Michigan. Daniel Rebane says, thoughts on Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng after his Notre Dame visit? I still feel like Michigan has the edge, which is good news, obviously, coming off a visit to a different school and the presumed leader on the on-three recruiting prediction machine. So, again, I still feel like Michigan has the edge. Now, could that change between now and signing day? Yes, Owusu-Boateng, has been kind of up and down in terms of momentum in his recruitment. Colorado remains a dark horse. One of the biggest things for Owusu-Boateng is playing right away. And I think Deion Sanders, I saw a little press conference video of Deion Sanders earlier today. I don't know when it was from or whatever, or when he said this, but he basically was explaining his thought process on recruiting, which, I wanted to watch the video because I'm a recruiting guy. I love recruiting. I don't really care for the transfer portal. And obviously Colorado does a ton of portal. So I just wanted to hear his take on recruiting. Anyway, he mentioned, I'm only going to recruit like 10 guys per class, because if I'm recruiting a true freshman, they're playing as a true freshman. And I thought that was interesting for Owusu-Boateng, just because he's harped on that so much, playing right away. And while Colorado is not the program that Michigan is, I think that opportunity to play right away and having that guarantee from Deion, who, is probably being truthful in that regard, because he does utilize the portal so much. He's not really recruiting. And he said that too, which I thought was hilarious. He said, I'm not recruiting anybody to get developed. I'm recruiting them to play. So I think that's something that has to be appealing to Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. But I think right now, Michigan's in a good spot. Daniel Rebane says Texas seems to lead for Grayson Littleton. What put UT over on the visit? Well, I mentioned this recruitment was going to be pretty NIL heavy. Obviously, Michigan is taking steps towards fixing that, but Texas is willing to play that game as well. And Texas's success on the field is something that's a big selling point for the Longhorns. So right now, I think Texas has the momentum, even though that's not reflected in the RPM. I haven't put in a prediction for either school. I think Michigan still has an opportunity here. They're still working on Littleton. They had a call with him last night. And there's no indication that he did give Texas a silent commit. So still a close battle. Again, I would probably give the edge to Texas coming out of his visit, but still a couple more weeks to go for Michigan to work some magic there. Daniel Rebane's last question is, we know about Elijah Dotson getting ready to flip, but any updates with Bradley Gompers, Quante Gillians, and Christian Ingram? Gompers is a tough one because he's a linebacker and they've put so much into Owusu Boateng. So it'll be interesting to see if they would take a guy like Gompers or Cameron White before Owusu Boateng decides, since Owusu Boateng's probably taking it to signing day. I think Michigan's in a good spot to flip Quante Gillians. Syracuse is the hometown school. So, I wouldn't be completely shocked if he stayed with Syracuse, but I think Michigan's in a decent spot there. I think, or in a really good spot there. I think Michigan is in a decent spot with Christian Ingram. I think they really improved their stock on his official visit, but there are some SEC schools involved here. He has some SEC official visits coming up. So, that's always tough for a guy from Georgia, but Esposito has shown that he can pull guys out of the Peach State. He did that with Julius Holly. So we'll see how things go with Christian Ingram. But I really like my interview with him. I mean, he had a lot of positive things to say. Tyler Smith says, who is the highest ranked recruit in 26 that we have a great chance at landing? Savion Hyder is the number 20 overall recruit in the country, the number 1 running back in the country per On3. I feel like I have that memorized because I write about Savion so much. But yeah, Michigan's in a really, really good spot for him. They have the lead on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. And there you see On3 having him number 20 in the country. He's number 24 on the industry ranking. So, he's been to campus 3 times. He was recently on campus for the game against Michigan State. I do think Michigan has the lead right now, but, Savion's taking his time, not wanting to make a decision until sometime in the off season. And Ohio State is making a hard push. They just had him on campus. Georgia is still a big factor. They're set to get him on campus as well. So, there's a few other schools involved, but yeah, I think Tony Alford has done as great of a job as he can with Savion Hyder, who, with Brady Hart already committed, I think Hyder is kind of that crown jewel of 26. So yeah, he's definitely the one that I would say Michigan's in a really good spot for. That's in the 5-star range. Blake Horlamoose says, what is going through the mind of Jaden Davis? I know he signed a few NIL deals when he came to Michigan, but Michigan is offering Bryce Underwood millions of dollars to commit. This is a business. These guys are adults now. They're no longer children. So who cares what Jaden Davis thinks? He hasn't been good enough to get on the field this season or even get a look. Really, who cares? Blake Horlamus says, what is going on with linebacker recruiting this cycle? Brian Jean Mary has historically been a fantastic recruiter everywhere he's been. One, they focus so much on Nathaniel Owusu Boateng, and 2 has always been the number, and they already have a commitment from Chase Taylor. So, it's kind of do or die with Nathaniel Owusu Boateng when it comes to Jean Mary. But also, I think Jean Mary's kind of been a little less active on the trail, mostly because he's probably getting older. I think recruiting can often be a young man's game, and so he might just be aging out a little bit. Joseph Grimaldi says, hey, EJ, any concern that Jalen Williams may be looking to flip out of the class? I feel like he is going to be a stud on the D-line. Yeah, we talked about it earlier. The expectation is still that he'll be at Wisconsin this weekend, but Michigan has had positive conversations with him this week. They're working to keep him. I expect Michigan to see him on the road here during the bye this week as well. So if he does show up to Wisconsin, I think that creates a level of concern. if he doesn't show up to Wisconsin, that means he's sticking. So I think the next few days will be interesting. Drew Petrosky says, is Marsh a possibility to flip? We also touched on that. I think Washington and Colorado are the biggest factors there. Washington probably a bigger one than Colorado as of today. I don't think Marsh is going to flip right now, but we'll see if he, visits one of those two schools. Sean Austin says, any news on potential quarterbacks for next season other than the USC kid? The portal doesn't really open until December 9th, I believe. So, we're not going to have a better idea, I think, until closer to then. Blake Horlamoose again says Michigan has improved their NIL, which attracts higher ranked recruits. Is there a concern that the culture in Michigan would be affected by more pay for play recruits signing with Michigan? I think you have to find the right guys to fit Michigan's culture while still spending with NIL. And that's always been my thing. I think a lot of people take what I say about NIL and Michigan lacking with NIL out of context. I want Michigan to do NIL. I want Michigan to do NIL well. I want Michigan to spend, but I've never said Michigan should become Miami. I've never advocated for Michigan to push for Bryce Underwood. I've never advocated for them to go after Naeem Offord or Jakeem Stewart or guys that, are clearly NIL motivated and NIL driven. I still think you have to find the right guys. So who are those guys, right? Shamari Earls, who's in the class, Andrew Babalola, who's in the class. They're definitely high level, 5-star level, top 100, top 150 guys that you can land that fit that Michigan mold with improvements in NIL. And that's proven this cycle with Shamari Earls. I think he got a nice package from Michigan. He's in the class. He fits the mold. Those are the types of kids you need to be getting. You don't need to offer $10 million to one kid, in my opinion. I get how desperate Michigan is for quarterback help. But I mean, moving forward, I think if you put together really, really competitive NIL packages for the right types of kids, you'll keep that culture. You just don't go after, completely NIL driven recruitments is what I would do. Sean Austin says, any transfer portal news? Our team guys handle the portal, but the portal doesn't open until December 9th. So nothing, too crazy right now. Leah Sparza the Force says, has there been any quarterbacks you have seen while watching Michigan commits that Michigan should look at? Like I said earlier in the show, right now the focus is still on Bryce Underwood. It's getting kind of late. Like out of the guys that they've had some interest in, it would be Malik Washington would be my pick. He is an on-300 quarterback committed to Maryland. He's a big prototypical pocket passer. He's not as dangerous as a runner as Carter Smith was, but he can run. He's more polished as a passer, but still needs some work there as well. But I think he's a really, really good prospect, not going to play right away, but I think, is definitely has starter potential for the future. He's ranked as the number 172 overall recruit nationally. So, yeah, I really like Malik Washington. That would be my guy. But, again, it's getting kind of late. Let's go ahead and go with Jackson Ross. And guys, we only have a few minutes left on the show. So make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. And also, if you wanted to get your question answered and skip the line, go ahead and leave a super chat. That's the box symbol with the $sign. That money goes directly to my travel budget so I can continue to see top recruits around the country. All right, where were we at, Jackson Ross? Oh, sorry, Megan. Make your prediction now. Who is Michigan's 2025 quarterback starter? Someone we don't know, somebody not on the roster. Sean Austin says, do you think Sherrone's job is safe? Yeah, I don't think they'll fire Sherrone after 1 year. Butter XO says, what current Michigan commits in 25 will likely move up the rankings? I think guys are kind of ranked in a fair spot. There isn't anybody I'm like really banging the drum for a big rankings bump. I think Olesh could have an argument as a 5-star prospect, but he's played so much in line this year. Shamari's already in that range. Babalola's already a 5-star. I think Kainoa Winston, who I'm very high on, is rated appropriately. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you'll see any massive bumps. I think the guy that really needs a bump is 2026 quarterback commit Brady Hart. What are we doing here? On three has him like around number 150 or something like that. He's a clear 5-star level guy for me. I think he should get a bump in the rankings. Michigan says, how is Grayson Littleton looking? Texas lock. What about Boateng? We talked about both earlier. I don't think Littleton is a Texas lock per se, but Michigan does have some work to do after his OV to Texas. And in terms of Owusu Boateng, I still like Michigan with him, but Notre Dame's going to keep fighting, and Colorado remains a dark horse. And we have hit the 30-minute mark, so let's do rapid fire. Marquis says, looks like Owusu Boateng is only looking at Michigan, Texas, and Colorado now. Do you have any thoughts? I don't think he's eliminated Notre Dame. And I kind of totally blanked on Texas with Owusu Boateng. It'll be interesting to see how that visit goes since they haven't been considered, that top factor. David says, is Michigan still in the race to flip Brandon Finney? Penn State has the lead on the RPM. They're still trying, but I think, Penn State definitely has the heavy lead there. Daniel Rebane says, thoughts on Julian Lewis potential flip to Colorado and have any impact that could tempt Marsh to visit the Buffs? Yeah, if they flip Colorado, I thought about that too. If Colorado flips Julian Lewis, I think that could entice Marsh to visit. John A. Schultz says, EJ, is there anything sadder than Michigan State recruiting? They're about to lose their top player on defense to Virginia Tech, and their homegrown East Lansing running back to Bama. They're about to drop even lower than 50. That is very sad. Why not just throw in picks and then change them and backtrack like Sam Webb? We don't really do that. I usually only put in picks if I'm fairly confident, that something's going to happen. I'll put in some early picks here and there just to have fun, kind of not build up hype for the next class, but kind of get you guys familiar with prospects that Michigan is really trending with early on. That's the only time I'll really do early picks. I have to feel really good before I drop a pick for Michigan. R. Green says, hey, EJ, why is Michigan so inept at recruiting quarterbacks? I know there was JJ and Brady Hart will be a thing, but overall the record is terrible. Well, during that stretch, you had Matt Weiss as the quarterback coach, and Jim Harbaugh was kind of taking a hands-off approach as he was very team-driven with trying to win a national title, and he already had his guy in JJ, and we all know that Matt Weiss did an awful job. And also, I think Michigan was late to adapt with NIL, and, guys command NIL at that position, as we see here with Bryce Underwood. All right, Tyree Smiley says, now Michigan playing NIL, do you see this class finishing top 10 every year? Michigan has played NIL. They've stepped up their game with guys like Shamari Earls, but I think the Bryce Underwood package is the Bryce Underwood package. Nobody else is getting close to that amount. So is Michigan actually stepping up their NIL significantly with recruiting? Are they stepping up moderately? I think we'll know a lot more when it comes to the 2026 class. But if they're willing to do what they did for Shamari Earls and an Andrew Olesh, and they're willing to do that with a lot more guys, then yes, I think Michigan has the potential to get top 10 classes, obviously. John A. Schultz says, EJ, thoughts on the 2030 quarterback Michigan offered? How is Michigan's 2030 class shaping up? Yeah, it's really early. Sam Holcomb, the 2030 quarterback who received an offer, is still in the 7th grade, I believe. I thought it was pretty cool because I've known Sam since he was a literal child, even though he's still a child, since he was an elementary student, I guess. So the cool thing about Sam is he is the son of Greg Holcomb, who is a quarterback trainer in Chicagoland, and Greg trained JJ McCarthy. So every time I would go out to see, what did Sam Webb say? I saw JJ 37 times. So all 37 of those times that I went to go see JJ, Sam was always there running around, throwing passes to JJ. His header is him as an elementary student with JJ. So it was pretty cool just knowing that little kid I saw is growing up and got a Michigan offer. So, hey, I'm not going to hate on 2030s getting offers, and especially Sam, because I'm rooting for him since I've known him as an elementary student. It's kind of cool to see. Tyree Smiley says, do you think Brady Hart is a 5-star level player? yes, I have Brady in that 5-star range. I think he will be in that range when it's all said and done. Mike TFG says, is it looking like Underwood is leaning towards staying at LSU? I'm still sticking with LSU. John Doe says, when all is said and done, do you have confidence that Bryce actually flips to Michigan? I mean, the only reason I have any sort of percent for Michigan, which, like I said, is 35% or a little lower, is because I know how much the NIL offer is. If that NIL offer was cut in half or didn't exist, then I would have zero confidence. So, that's kind of where I'm at. Mike TFG says, are we going to land Littleton or not? Also, is Ivan Taylor flipping, and do we really have a really good chance at landing Underwood? Right now, I would say Littleton sides with Texas, but Michigan's still fighting. I do think Ivan Taylor flips, and I would definitely not say that Michigan has a really good chance with Underwood. Mike TFG says, can Michigan land another surprise 5-star in the 25 class? Probably not. Sean Austin says, why is the freshman running back from Ohio not getting touches? Jordan Marshall, do you think he should be playing more? He's been injured. John A. Schultz says, EJ, what happened to the mystery high-ranked recruit you mentioned in the fort last week? No hint. No hints right now. Struggle Streaming BK said, would Carter Smith consider coming back to Michigan if the whole Underwood thing fails? I talked to his dad a few days ago, and I don't think they're coming back. Art Green says, another quarterback question. Michigan preferred Jaden Davis to Michael Van Buren, who I seem to remember you believe was a better option. How has that worked out? Van Buren's been doing well as a true freshman at Mississippi State. It'll be interesting to see if he hits the portal with how bad his team is. But he's been doing well, especially for a first-year guy. And obviously, Jaden Davis hasn't been able to see the field in the worst quarterback room in Power 4 football. So I think right now my eval's looking pretty good. Mike TFG says, a bit of a personal question. What's up with Sam Webb calling you a fake insider? I thought all you Michigan insiders were friends. Just because we both cover Michigan doesn't mean that we are friends. Like, it's like, okay, McDonald's and Burger King, they both sell burgers. Are they friends? Absolutely not. To me, if I'm competing against you, and I've said this before, if I'm competing against you, it doesn't matter if I'm playing you in air hockey or ping pong or, video games, whatever. When I'm competing against my wife, I hate her. She's my worst enemy. I will beat her at anything, right? It's the same thing. It's nothing personal. I don't know Sam Webb. I don't have anything personal against him. I don't know him. He seems like a clown, but I don't really know him like that. So, it's nothing personal. It's more just like, hey, I'm competing against you, so I don't like you. Bonji says, do you think Minter would have stayed at Michigan if he was offered the head coaching job, or was he always going to follow Jim to the NFL? I think I would have liked to have seen Minter get some consideration. I thought he was a fantastic coach. Obviously, he's doing really well in the NFL, but I think he did have NFL aspirations. Sean Austin says, is Jaden Davis going to – what's up with all the Jaden Davis questions? What is this, last year? Is Jaden Davis going to stay? Do you think he will? Does he have any potential to ever play at Michigan? I think he can – his ceiling is probably being a Cade McNamara type, which means he can have success if he has a lot of talent around him and he's allowed to just manage the game. In terms of will he stay, who knows? Sean Austin says, Carter Smith, can he return to the class? Just answered that, probably not. Do you think Miller Moss transfers to Michigan? Reports are that Michigan is at the top of his list. He's not even in the portal yet, so we'll see. All right, guys, I appreciate y'all joining me tonight. Again, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, and also subscribe to thewolverine.com. If you have more questions, head over to thewolverine.com. Use the promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months over at thewolverine.com. Get all the latest intel on Bryce Underwood, other flip targets, and so much more. Plus, we have a great message board community with like 8,000 users. So come over, join the discussion, and I will see you guys again next Tuesday.